Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to a brand new session in Educators Plus. I am Akarshi, your English faculty at Educators Plus. So, students, as I am running this course on YouTube, crash course basically for the UGC NET 2023 March. So, today for today's lesson, like last lesson, we have practiced about Chaucer, Dark Age, Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Normals. So in this class, basically, I have brought some important points for Elizabethan and Jacobean age. Okay. So in this class of 11 a.m., I will be discussing the theory of Elizabethan age and Jacobean age, the important writers and their works. And in my 1 p.m. class, I will be actually practicing. Okay. I have brought some questions of the previous years which are asked in your NET exam of Elizabethan and Jacobean age. Okay, so please stay tuned throughout the class, and if you have any doubt, you can post in the chat box. I will be answering all your doubts. Okay, so let's not waste much of the time and begins today's class. Okay. So basically the first slide says that Elizabethan age. Okay, so the first point that comes here is that the Elizabethan age took place from 1558 to 1603. Okay, so please actually just know the time period of this age. Yes, good morning. Okay, so basically this Elizabethan age हमारी कब से start हुई थी? Start हुई थी हमारी 1558 से to 1603, and it is considered to be a golden age in इंग्लिश. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है. ठीक है, आपको अगर पूछेंगे कि वाई एलिजाबेथन एज इज कॉल्ड एज गोल्डन एज, तो दैट आई विल बी एक्सप्लेनिंग टू यू, बट यू शुड रिमेंबर. ठीक है, कि एलिजाबेथन एज को गोल्डन एज कहा जाता है बिकॉज the Elizabethan age is the time period associated with the reign of Queen Elizabeth and is often considered as a golden age. ठीक है, and because it was an age in which the minds of the people were set free from religious persecutions. So जैसे मैंने बताया था कि जो एंग्लो सैक्सन एंग्लो नॉर्मन्स है, then Chaucer came, तो ये सब religious writings थी. So religion was very much prominent during this period. Christianity, the Roman Catholics were very much prominent in this period. ठीक है, but जब Elizabethan age आई तो people were set free from the religious persecution and from the fear of poverty, starvation and from the fear of foreign invasions. And जो भी war थी dark age में, because it was called as dark age because वहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा wars थी. ठीक है, there was a lot of destruction. कुछ अच्छी writings produce नहीं हो रही थी, कुछ अच्छे literary scenario नहीं था उस समय. ठीक है, but when the English Renaissance arrived, okay, when the Elizabethan age started, it was an era of social, political and religious peace, and it was also an era of great adventure and you can say that travel or discovery. ठीक है, fine. And it was the golden age of literature, an age in which the Renaissance could come to full flowering under the reign of Queen Elizabeth. ठीक है, तो किसका रेन था ये? क्वीन एलिजाबेथ का. ठीक है, so this was a ruling period of Queen Elizabeth, and this age is also considered to be the height of the English Renaissance that I've already told you कि the Renaissance. ठीक है, the English Renaissance was at its peak. ठीक है, the English Renaissance was at its peak, and basically it was a flowering period for the theatre as well, as William Shakespeare among others also composed and staged plays in the variety of settings that broke away from the England's past style of plays. ठीक है, so इसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? इसको हम तो गोल्डन एज को बोलते ही है इंग्लैंड के, बिकॉज क्वीन एलिजाबेथ वाज रूलिंग एंड देयर वाज अ प्रोलिफरेशन ऑफ द वर्क्स. लिटरेरी पीरियड बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रेंथन हो गया था एंड इंग्लिश रेनेसां वाज एट इट्स पीक. ओके, सो दैट्स व्हाई इट इज आल्सो नोन एज द रेनेसां एज. ठीक है, द शेक्सपियरियन एज क्यों थी? बिकॉज बहुत सारा theatre was actually flourishing at that point of time, because with the arrival of William Shakespeare, the dramatist, a lot of plays or dramas were written, and that's why he was so much of great worth at that period of time that Elizabethan age or Shakespearean age are used synonymously. So that's why it is also known as a Shakespearean age. ठीक है, It is known as the first great age of drama and the second great age of poetry. ठीक है? So basically what happened कि it was an age of expansion, exploration abroad, while at home the Protestant Reformation was established and successfully defended against the Catholic powers of the continent. तो मैंने जैसे बताया था कि पहले religious institutions, religious power बहुत ज़्यादा थी. Roman Catholics were actually in a great number. But here freedom of speech आने लगा when the Elizabethan age arrived. So that's why people starting actually living free. They are set free from all these religious institutions. Okay, though the poetical production was not quite equal to the dramatic, poetry enjoyed still its very heyday during the Elizabethan age, and it was nevertheless of great original beauty. Poetic fervor बहुत ज़्यादा था इस age में, ठीक है? Lyrics, songs and sonnets were produced in huge number. ठीक है, कौन सा था? Lyrics, sonnets, okay, they were written in huge number. Lyrics, sonnets and poems, you can say that they were written in huge number. What is it? Fine. That's why it is also known as the second age of poetry. But remember that this age is basically known for drama, and this actually sonnet form was actually brought. Basically, Petrarch used to write the sonnet from it in Italy, and this Spenser introduced some pictorial and melody into poetry. Elizabethan poetries were extraordinary because of its freshness and distinct variety. Okay? And it is also known as the era of sonnet. It is also known as the era of sonnet. Okay? And because basically sonnets were popularized in this period, it was introduced by Thomas Watt. So who introduced? So Thomas Watt is the person who introduced sonnets into English in the 16th century, and he introduced Petrarchan sonnet. Just remember, okay? So this Thomas Watt introduced Petrarchan sonnet, and Shakespeare made changes to this Italian model of the Petrarchan sonnet and introduced his own style now, which is known as the English sonnet or Shakespearean sonnet. Now you know. Yes, okay, so now you know basically that Shakespeare was so much of having a popularity at that time. वो इतना famous था Elizabethan age में कि उसका नाम से एक तो age तो जानी जाती है because it is known as the Shakespearean age, और उसने sonnets जो भी introduce करा था, which he reformed of the Petrarchan sonnet or the Italian sonnet, and that's why it is the new sonnet which Shakespeare used to write is also known as English sonnet or Shakespearean sonnet. ठीक है? So popularity of poetry थी, era of sonnet था, ठीक है? Emergence of Renaissance हुआ, मैं भी ये बता चुकी हूँ point, and development of drama also was there, ठीक है? So emergence of Renaissance in the Elizabethan age, which actually were the potent forces were the Renaissance and Reformation, ठीक है? So मैंने बताया था आपको कि पहले क्लास में कि John Wycliffe is known as the morning star of Reformation. तो उसने उस एज में वो इनिशिएट करा था Reformation. That's why he's known the morning star. But in Elizabethan age, Reformation also was a very potent force in this age. ठीक है? And Renaissance was a time of great improvement of art, literature and learning in Europe. And the Renaissance age began in the 14th century and extended till 17th century. जो अब मैंने आपको already बता दिया. Yes, Watt and Surrey were also there, who actually introduced, basically Thomas Watt was the first person who introduced Italian sonnet into English. Fine, let's move ahead now. Now let's talk about Edmund Spenser. So as we know that Edmund Spenser was also a very important writer of the Elizabethan age, and he is a major Renaissance poet. ठीक है? कैसा poet था? He is a major Renaissance poet. He is a major Renaissance poet and considered as the new poet. So he is also known as the new poet. He is also known as a new poet, and his basically writings marked a new beginning in English poetry. ठीक है? And there was a group known as Aeropagus. जो important points मैं आपको बताती जा रही हूँ. Aeropagus. ठीक है? So Aeropagus basically was a group, and it was what kind of a group it was? It was a literary group of poets, and what were the poets of this particular group? Spenser, Earl of Leicester, Sidney, Edward Dyer, and Greville. So these were the 5 poets who were the part of this group, and it is a literary group. So ये आपका जो question, ये जो मैं बता रही हूँ आपको point, ये आपका नेट का question है. ठीक है, कि कौन सा ग्रुप था जो स्पेंसर ने इनिशिएट करा था, एंड द राइटर्स व्हिच आई हैव टोल्ड यू लाइक अर्ल ऑफ लीसेस्टर, सिडनी, एडवर्ड ड्राई एंड ग्रेवेल, दीज वर द पार्ट ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर group. So please remember that Aeropagus is a literary group which was made by Spenser. Okay. Yes, Chaucer was the morning star of Renaissance, and John Wycliffe is the morning star of Reformation. So this Renaissance and Reformation both were in full-fledged form in the Renaissance period. ठीक है? Yes. Chaucer is also known as the father of poetry. Fine. Okay. So that I told you, the Aeropagus was a literary group. Also remember that he is the modern poet of who actually exploited the poetic resources of the English language. ठीक है? And his greatness, जो Edmund Spenser की greatness थी, वो इस fact में थी that he has inspired the greatest writers of all times like Milton and Keats. तो जो Milton था Puritan period का writer, and Keats was a romantic period, तो और ये जो Edmund Spenser Renaissance period का था. So he has inspired such great writers as well. Okay, and basically if I talk about the Edmund Spenser writing side, so basically he is admired for the enchantment and high romance portrayed in his work, and he is often considered as England's first epic poet. Okay, so इसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? England's first epic poet. And he is also called as the poet's poet. He is also called as the poet's poet. And ये किसने बोला था? आप मुझे चैट बॉक्स में बता सकते हैं कि who has called Edmund Spenser poet's poet? प्लीज टेल मी इन द चैट बॉक्स कि किसने बोला था एडमंड स्पेंसर को पोएट्स पोएट. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है, अगेन अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ नेट. ठीक है, ये क्वेश्चन ऑफ नेट है. एंड पोएट्स पोएट हैज बीन कॉल्ड बाय चार्ल्स लैम्ब. Okay, he has been called as the poet's poet by Charles Lamb. ठीक है, so please remember this point is a very important point. Fine. Now let's talk about his work. Let's talk about the Shepherd's Calendar. ठीक है, so basically it is the first work of Spenser, and Shepherd's Calendar was initially published under the pseudonym of Emerito. ठीक है, so let's talk about Shepherd's Calendar. Okay, published under the pseudonym of Emerito. ये भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है कि किस इनिशियल नेम ऑफ द शेफर्ड्स कैलेंडर वाज एमेरिटो, एंड दिस वर्क वाज पब्लिश अराउंड 1579. It was published around 1579. And basically the publication of Shepherd's Calendar marks Spencer's formal entry as a new poet. As I told you, he was also known as a new poet. So जब ये उसने work लिखा था, it actually marked his entry into the English world. ठीक है, and talking about Shepherd's Calendar, so basically it contains 12 eclogues. Okay, and what are these eclogues? Eclogues are basically pastoral poems. Okay, so it contains 12 eclogues, and eclogues are known as pastoral poems. And basically this 12 eclogues actually represent the months from January to December. ठीक है, हर एक eclogue एक month में को dedicated है, and that's why it has 12 eclogues, because we have 12 months in a year. Fine. Yes, Gaur, very good. It is Charles Lamb. Okay, and this pastoral form has its basically Chaucer was not the first person who to initiate this pastoral form. It was already found in the works of the Greek writers like Theocritus, Bile and Sicilian poets. Okay, just Edmund Spenser has used that form in English. Okay, and not only Edmund Spenser has used, many of the writers of the Renaissance period has used this pastoral form in their work. Okay, and basically in Shepherd's Calendar, Spenser has, by combining these equilogues together in calendar, Spenser created a way to actually combine unity with diversity. Okay? So, what was the main theme of Shepherd's Calendar? Combining unity with diversity. Please note down these points. These points are very important. So आप इसको note down करते रहो ताकि आपके notes तैयार हो जाए साथ ही साथ क्लास के. ठीक है. And basically these जो eclogues है सारे जो थे, these are very cyclic in nature. Why cyclic? Because again they show us a season. ठीक है, जैसे seasons हमारे cyclic होते हैं, similarly that kind of a idea has been depicted in Shepherd's Calendar. And who was the central character of this poem? Colin Clout. So Colin Clout was a central character, and basically this Colin Clout is actually complaining about the unrequited love for Rosalind. Okay, and this Colin Clout is basically a personification of Spenser. Colin Clout Come Home Again is again a work of Spenser in which he has personified himself, and this so basically just write down this point. Personification of Spenser. Yes, it's a pastoral elegy. Okay, fine. So I hope I have made myself clear with these points. So these were the points of Shepherd's Calendar. Let's move again to Fairy Queen. Okay, so Fairy Queen के बारे में बात करते हैं. So Fairy Queen is also a work by Spenser, and it is an epic poem by Edmund Spenser. तो Fairy Queen कैसी है? एक epic poem है. Okay, Fairy Queen is an epic poem by Spenser, and basically this poem shows the adventures of a number of medieval knights. And basically the speciality of this Fairy Queen was that each book, okay, owes an adventure to a particular knight who represents a certain virtue. And these virtues, like sometimes like holiness, temperance, chastity, friendship, justice, courtesy. So these were some of the virtues. So basically they shows the virtue of a particular knight. This shows the virtues of a particular knight adventures of a particular knight. Adventure of a particular knight, which shows a particular virtue. ठीक है? And it is basically the first work of Spenser which is written in Spenserian stanza form. जैसे मैंने बताया था कि this Edmund Spenser is also known for actually initiating a Spenserian sonnet kind of a thing. So it is written in Spenserian stanza form, and it is the first work. So this is the question of net as well, ki which is the first work of Spenser which is written in Spenserian stanza form. So it is Shepherd's Calendar. Okay, fine. Okay, and this basically focus on a different virtue that I have already told you, and these virtues are defended by different knights and are threatened by various forces. Okay, and this work, Fairy Queen, is the most memorable for the description of the individual characters such as the foul and hideous witch, okay, Red Cross Knight, dragon. So even Queen Elizabeth was also represented in this particular book in the form of Gloriana. Okay, so Britomart and Gloriana, these were the two characters which represents Queen Elizabeth I. Fine, are you getting it? Any problem, you can just post in the chat box. Okay, and please remember, it is an unfinished book. ये एक अनफिनिश्ड वर्क है and actually and the book 7 contains the 2 cantos of mutability as well. Okay, let's move ahead now. Let's talk about a volume of complaints. So basically a volume of complaint is a kind of a anthology which consists of different poems. Okay, so कौन सी poems है? The Ruins of Time. Okay, what? So volume of complaint is an anthology which consists of different poems like The Ruins of Time, Tears of Muses, Virgil's Nut. Okay, Tears of Muses, Virgil's Nut, Mother Hubbard Tale, Mother Hubbard Tale, and Virgil's Nut, Mother Hubbard Tale. All these were the works of volume of complaints. So basically, The Ruins of Time is a poem about a decay of poetry in Spencer time, and this Tears of Muses is also a second complaint lamenting the decay of learning and arrival of barbarism. So uncivilization was prominent, so that's why it is actually lamenting the loss of or the decay of poetry in that period of time. Next is the Virgil's Nut. So it is attributed to Virgil's writing. And next is Mother Hubbard Tale. It is a basically a shorter poem and is a beast fable and a political satire. So ये आपको याद रखना है. This is the most important point कि ये एक beast fable है. चौसर ने कौन सी बीस्ट फेबल लिखी थी? मैंने आपको लास्ट लेक्चर में बताया था कि चौसर ने भी बीस्ट फेबल लिखी थी. कैन यू जस्ट टेल मी इन द चैट बॉक्स? Okay, can you just tell me in the chat box which beast fable Chaucer has written? मैंने आपको last lecture में बताया था if you have followed my lecture. Okay, so Chaucer has written Parliament of Fowls, which is again a beast fable. ठीक है, तो मैंने आपको ये important point mark भी करवाया था. Fine, let's move ahead. Okay, so these were the Ruins of Time, Tears of Muses, Virgil's Nut, and Mother Hubbard Tale. So these were all the works. Fine. Colin Cloud Come Home Again. As I told you, Colin Cloud was actually personification of Spencer, and he has mentioned him as in Shepherd's Tale as well. So it's again a pastoral allegory. It is a pastoral allegory, and basically it describes Spencer's visit to London and his subsequent return to Ireland. So as you know that Spencer homeland was Ireland. Okay, so when Spencer returned to home again, that is Ireland, so that's why he has written Colin Cloud Come Home Again. And as I told you, Colin Cloud is a personification of Spencer, and the work mentioned his visit to Elizabethan court, disenchantment with the court life, and it ends with the firm decisions to remain a poet. So he was actually lamenting his lost merit, that he was not recognized as in Elizabethan court. But later on he actually pacified himself that yes, I am a poet, my work is to write, I should not actually be मुझे उस तरफ ध्यान नहीं देना चाहिए कि मुझे बहुत recognition मिले, I should be happy as a poet. So this was something, an idea of Colin Cloud Come Home Again. Next is Amoreti. So Amoreti भी आपको पता होना चाहिए, and you must have heard about this work that these are love sonnets. It is a collection of love sonnets. ठीक है, ये एक collection है love sonnet which is written in which actually laments the unrequited love, and it is written in Petrarchan mode. Okay, it is written in Petrarchan mode, and there are 89 sonnets in Amoreti which actually Spencer dedicated to his beloved Elizabeth Boyle. ठीक है, इसमें 89 sonnets हैं. Sonnets hai, and which is dedicated to Elizabeth Boyle. So she was a beloved of Spencer, and he has dedicated these 89 sonnets to his beloved. Elizabeth Boyle. And what was the central theme of this particular work? It was unrequited love, because Elizabeth was not ready to accept Spencer's love, and Spencer was continuously writing to woo her. Okay? And Immortality is basically a sonnet cycle tracing the suitor's long courtship and eventually wooing by his beloved. So he was in the starting, he was actually complaining that this Elizabeth Boyle was not actually accepting the love, but later on he pacifies himself, but I'll still continue to write for her and immortalize her in my work. So this was a central theme of this particular work. Okay, next is Epithalamion. So you must have heard that Epithalamion is basically an ode written to commemorate the nuptials of the speaker and his bride. Okay, so when and it basically basically Epithalamion was written to commemorate the speaker's bride. Who was the speaker? Speaker was Spencer. ठीक है, तो उसके लिए लिखा गया था. And what of Prothalamion? Prothalamion was written again as an ode, and it basically Epithalamion was written. उसने अपनी खुद के लिए मैरिज के लिए लिखी थी, but Prothalamion was written for the nuptial of the daughter of the Earl of Worcester, Lady Elizabeth and Lady Catherine. तो Lady Elizabeth लेडी एलिजाबेथ एंड लेडी कैथरीन की मैरिज के लिए लिखी थी, और एपिथेलियन उसने अपनी खुद की मैरिज के लिए लिखी थी. नेक्स्ट, अ व्यू ऑफ द स्टेट ऑफ द प्रेजेंट स्टेट ऑफ आयरलैंड. So basically it contains the Spencer's argument for the needs of reform in the island. Okay, and this astrophel, again the question of net, astrophel has been asked in net. And basically what is astrophel? Astrophel is a pastoral elegy written on the death of Sir Philip सिडनी. किसकी डेथ पे लिखी गई थी? फिलिप सिडनी की. फिलिप सिडनी की डेथ में लिखी गई थी. ये क्वेश्चन पूछा जा चुका है नेट में, so please remember. And Spencer had previously lamented the death of Sydney in ruins of time as well. So okay, जो हमने वर्क की बात करी थी, सॉरी, ruins of time, इसमें भी उसने उसकी फिलिप सिडनी की बात कर चुका है. फाइन. Okay, so this was all about Spencer. If you have any problem or doubt, you can just post in the chat box. Let's move to the next writer, that is Philip Sidney. Okay, so as you know that Philip Sidney was again a Renaissance poet, and he was a soldier and a courtier at Elizabethan court as well. ठीक है, and he is also known as a knight, the lover, the scholar, and he also used Petrarch as a source in his love poems, who actually idolized his beloved in sonnets. Okay, and the idolization is one of the major feature of Renaissance poetry. ठीक है, तो रेनेसा में दिस आइडलाइजेशन वाज वेरी कॉमन. ठीक है, जैसे स्पेंसर ने भी आइडलाइज करा एलिजाबेथन बॉयल को, फिलिप सिडनी भी अपनी बिलवर्ड को आइडलाइज करता था. दिस वाज समथिंग अ वेरी कॉमन थीम ऑफ पेट्रार्क. इन इटली ही यूज्ड टू आइडलाइज हिज बिलवर्ड लॉरा. सो अपनी अपनी बिलवर्ड को सब आइडलाइज करते थे. दिस वाज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फीचर ऑफ द रेनेसा पीरियड. ठीक है, so let's talk about the first work, that is the Lady of May. So Lady of May is a short pastoral work by Sidney. As I told you, pastoral form was very much prominent or very much into use in the Elizabethan age, and it consists of a dispute between a shepherd and a foster for the hand of rustic Lady of May. So basically it is a dispute होता था. इसमें एक लड़ाई होती थी shepherd में और एक foster में, and they were actually asking for the hand of Lady of May. Okay, एस्ट्रोफेल एंड स्टेला, इसके क्वेश्चंस पूछे जा चुके हैं नेट में. तो प्लीज ये जो मैं पॉइंट्स बता रही हूँ आपको, ये आप याद रखना, दैट इट इज अ सीक्वेंस ऑफ 108 सॉनेट्स एंड 11 सॉन्ग्स बाय सिडनी. ठीक है, कितने हैं इसमें? 108 सॉनेट्स हैं एंड 11 सॉन्ग्स हैं बाय सिडनी. तो 108 सॉनेट्स एंड 11 सॉन्ग्स का ही पूरा कंपाइलेशन है एस्ट्रोफेल एंड स्टेला. And what was the main idea of this Astrophel Stella? Basically the poem is about Astrophel. ठीक है, and कौन था Astrophel? Astrophel था एक stargazer who actually is a love for Stella. And who was Stella? Stella was star. So ये stargazer था, एंड ये स्टेला कौन थी? रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ स्टार. She is a representation of star. And what was the theme of this particular work? The theme of the poem is unrequited love, and Sydney Stella was Penelope. ठीक है, जो रियल में जो सिडनी की स्टेला थी, that was Penelope, and the poem is influenced again by the Italian sonnet form. And what was the influence of Italian sonnet form? The idealization of beloved. तो इस यहाँ पे भी स्पेंसर ने अपनी जो beloved थी Penelope को, उसको idealize करा था in the form of Stella. ठीक है. Yes, very good, Gohar. 108 sonnet, 11 songs by Sydney. Okay. Next, Arcadia. तो आपने भी आर्केडिया के वर्क के बारे में मतलब यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड अबाउट सिडनी दैट इट इज डेडिकेटेड टू हिज सिस्टर मैरी हर्बर्ट. ठीक है, किसको डेडिकेट करा था? मैरी हर्बर्ट को. एंड हु वाज मैरी हर्बर्ट? मैरी हर्बर्ट वाज सिस्टर ऑफ सिडनी. ओके. And who was actually known as the Countess of Pembroke, and it is actually kind of this is बाकी सब pastoral work थे, ये एक prose romance था. This was a prose romance. Okay, are you enjoying the class? If you are enjoying, just let me know in the chat box. Okay, and if you have any difficulty, you can ask me in the chat box. I will be answering your doubts as well. ठीक है. So, Arcadia is a prose romance, and it is dedicated to his sister Mary Herbert, who is also known as the Countess of Pembroke. And the most important point about this work is that Shakespeare used an episode from Arcadia as the source for the Gloucester subplot in King Lear. ठीक है, it is a question of net. ये net का question है कि शेक्सपियर ने इसका जो प्लॉट था आर्केडिया का, उसने कहाँ यूज करा था? ही हैज यूज्ड इन किंग लियर फॉर ग्लाउसेस्टर. ग्लाउसेस्टर वाज द कैरेक्टर इन किंग लियर. उसके प्लॉट के लिए ही हैज यूज्ड दिस एपिसोड फ्रॉम आर्केडिया इन किंग लियर. तो ये आपको बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है, दिस यू हैव टू रिमेंबर. फाइन. Yes, an apology for poetry. Yes, we'll be coming to Gohar for apology of poetry as well. So yes. Next is the defense of poesy. Okay, so defense of poesy is then basically it is also known as the apology for poetry, and it is written by Philip Sidney, and this is a prose work which was a reply to Stephen Gozon's The School of Poetry. So basically Stephen Gozon, in his work The School of Poetry, he has denounced poetry and he has denounced the writers of the poets. ठीक है, but in his work Defense of Poesy, which was actually elaborated an apology of poetry, Sidney actually described poet as a maker of new things. Okay, and like Aristotle, Sidney in his work actually is defending the unity of time, place and action. ठीक है, so this was all about the defense of poesy. Yes. Okay, so now let's move ahead. That was all about Philip Sidney. Let's come to university wits. Okay, so you must have heard about university wits as well. Okay, so the university wits were the notable group of pioneer English dramatists who wrote during the last 15 years of the 16th century. ठीक है, so these were basically the people from the Cambridge or Oxford who started writing during the Renaissance period. Fine. And they were also university wits were coined by Sainsbury. जो ये term है university wit, it was actually coined by Sainsbury. So this is again a question of net. ठीक है, ये question net में पूछा जा चुका है. Who has coined the term university wit? So it was coined by Sainsbury, and they are also known as the seventh star or cosmos. तो ये आपके किसी set exam में पूछा गया था ये question कि university wits are also known as the seven stars of the cosmos. Yes, they were the group of 7 poets. Good. Okay, and the university wits include Christopher Marlowe, Robert Greene, Thomas Nash, Thomas Lodge, George Peele, Thomas Kidd. Okay, so these were all the university wits, and basically these were Christopher Marlowe, Robert Greene and Thomas Nash. They were from Cambridge. Okay, they were from Cambridge. Thomas Lodge and George Peele were from Oxford. ठीक है, they were from Oxford. Thomas Kidd, he was not university trained, but still he is counted in university wit. You should remember that. कि who was that, ये क्वेश्चन भी आपका नेट पे पूछा जा चुका है कि who was that writer who was actually counted in university wit but was not university trained, that was Thomas Kidd. एक और राइटर है जॉन लिली. ओके, जॉन लिली इज ऑल्सो काउंटेड इन यूनिवर्सिटी विट. सो देखो 7 हो गए ना, सो दैट्स व्हाई दे आर नोन एज द 7 स्टार्स ऑफ कॉस्मोस. ओके फाइन, लेट्स मूव अहेड नाउ. नेक्स्ट लेट्स टॉक अबाउट क्रिस्टोफर मार्लो. सो आपको सारे इनके सबके वर्क्स पता होना चाहिए. ओके, सो जॉर्ज पील हैज आल्सो criticized Shakespeare, calling him the upstart crow without feathers in his green growth spurt of wit. ये भी आपको, ये भी क्वेश्चन है नेट का कि जॉर्ज पील ने किस वर्क में शेक्सपियर को बोला था upstart crow without feathers. It was green growth word of wit. So you should remember this. ठीक है, and let's talk about Christopher Marlowe. So Christopher Marlowe basically was at Cambridge University trained, and he has written basically when he was in Cambridge he has translated Greek and Latin poetries as well. Okay, and Marlowe is known for for the plays like Tamburlaine, the Tragedy of Dido, Queen of Carthage, Edward II, Dr. Faustus, the Jew of Malta, the Massacre at Paris, and Hero and Leander. And he's been credited with making necromancy and raising of spirit a hot topic at the end of 17th century. ठीक है, so he was actually famous for initiating necromancy or the Renaissance magic. It is also known as Renaissance magic in the Renaissance time, and he has initiated this on stage. Okay, later Ben Jonson's early Mask for the Stuart Court, the Mask of Queens, and Shakespeare's also brought the Macbeth also have necromancy as its theme. Okay, and these kind of theme actually popularized theater and also increased the interest in a very different concept of Renaissance magic. So who actually these kind of themes were initiated in the plays, and who was credited for initiating it? It was Christopher Marlowe. Yes, very good, Gohar. His blank verse is also known as mighty lines. So for 50 years he is known for actually running blank verse in English theater. That's why Christopher and it is all the credit goes to Christopher Marlowe. Yes, the university which they were liberal in their thoughts, and they were actually responsible for initiating the Renaissance drama in English. Okay, let's talk about the first work of Christopher Marlowe, that is Tamburlaine. Okay, so आपने Tamburlaine के बारे में स्टोरी आपने पढ़ा होगा if you are preparing for UGC NET. So this play is written in 2 parts. Okay, and it shows the greed and lust for power. So basically the theme of Faustian urge. Okay, the theme of Faustian urge has been popularized in this particular work. Okay, and what is Faustian urge? It is the greed and lust for पावर. आपको पावर चाहिए, तो पावर लेने के लिए आप कुछ भी करोगे. यू कैन मर्डर एनी पर्सन, यू कैन जस्ट किसी को धोखा दोगे, कुछ भी करोगे टू गेन दैट पावर, एंड दैट काइंड ऑफ अ डिजायर इज नोन एज फॉस्टियन अर्ज. एंड दिस इज अबाउट दिस रूलर Tamburlaine, and it how he actually became the possessor of throne through the use of violence and slaughter. That is the main theme of the work Tamburlaine. Okay, so now your homework is to read about Tamburlaine, because this is again a very important work from the examination point of view. आप कोई भी एग्जाम दो लिटरेचर का, ये एक जो अगर मान लो पूछा जा रहा है तो ये भी एक वर्क पूछा जाता है इन योर एग्जाम्स. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट इज द ट्रेजेडी ऑफ डीडो, Queen of Carthage. Okay, and this play is written by Marlowe in collaboration with Thomas Nash. Thomas Nash is a university with. ठीक है, so ये जो play है Tragedy of Dido, Queen of Carthage, ये सिर्फ मार्लो ने नहीं लिखा था, ये मार्लो ने in collaboration of Thomas Nash के लिखा था. Question of net. ठीक है, ये पूछा जा चुका है. एंड दिस वर्क इज बेस्ड अपॉन वर्जिल एनिड. वर्जिल का जो वर्क है एनी, उस पे ये बेसिकली बेस्ड है. एंड इट डिपिक्ट्स द स्टोरी ऑफ एनीज एंड डीडो एंड अ सुसाइड व्हेन शी फेल्ड टू परसुएड एनी टू स्टे विद हर. सो इट इज अ काइंड ऑफ, एज यू सी दैट इट इज इसमें सुसाइड होती है, दैट्स व्हाई इट इज अ ट्रेजेडी. फाइन. Okay, please excuse me to drink water. Okay, fine. Okay, let's talk about Edward II. ठीक है, so Edward II is again a historical play by whom? By Marlowe. किसने लिखा था एडवर्ड सेकेंड? मार्लो ने लिखा था, एंड इट इज अ हिस्टोरिकल प्ले एंड द स्टोरी इज अबाउट एडवर्ड एक्सेशन टू द थ्रोन. It also shows the rebellion of Queen Isabella and Edward murder in Berkeley Castle. ठीक है, and this play is written in tragedy form because it actually shows the Edward's murder, so that's why Edward का murder होता है, so it's a tragedy, and which later influenced Shakespeare in writing the play Richard II. मैं सिर्फ यहाँ पे पॉइंट्स लिख रही हूँ, आप उसको पूरा सेंटेंस में लिख लो, क्योंकि ये अगेन एक क्वेश्चन है नेट का कि कौन सा प्ले शेक्सपियर का एडवर्ड सेकेंड से इन्फ्लुएंस है. इट इज रिचर्ड सेकेंड. तो ये रिचर्ड सेकेंड है, ये शेक्सपियर का प्ले है जो शेक्सपियर ने एडवर्ड सेकेंड की स्टोरी से इन्फ्लुएंस होके लिखा था. सो इट इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ नेट, प्लीज मार्क दिस पॉइंट, इंपॉर्टेंट. ओके, फाइन. लेट्स टॉक अबाउट डॉक्टर फॉस्टर्स. ये तो आपका बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट प्ले है, सो आपको ये तो प्ले पढ़ना ही है. ठीक है, यू शुड रीड डॉक्टर फॉस्टर्स. इट्स अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट प्ले, सो आई विल बी यूजिंग हियर एज वेल. डॉक्टर फॉस्टर्स. ठीक है, सो द कंप्लीट टाइटल क्या है? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. द कंप्लीट टाइटल इज नॉट डॉक्टर फॉस्टर्स, द ट्रेजिकल हिस्ट्री ऑफ लाइफ एंड डेथ ऑफ डॉक्टर फॉस्टर्स. The tragical history of life and death of Dr. Faustus. This is the complete title of this play, and this story is written in blank words and prose style depicting the classical legend of a man who sold his soul to devil. ठीक है, तो जो डॉक्टर फॉस्टस था, he again wants to have power. ठीक है, तो उसको क्या करना था? उसको for that he actually sold his soul to a devil, and it is written in blank words. So as you know that blank words is also known as the mighty lines, because Marlowe is the one who actually popularized it. So that's why this play is also written in blank words. ठीक है, and this kind of the play is also basically a conflict between good and evil, and this conflict between good and evil was a very popular theme during medieval drama. And magic, okay, good versus evil was the conflict. ठीक है, इसमें और क्या था? मैजिक वॉज अ थीम. मैजिक इज अ रिकरिंग मोटिव. ठीक है, ये बार बार आपको ये मैजिक देखने को मिलेगा इन दिस प्ले. एंड दिस वर्ड इज एक्चुअली अडॉप्टेड फ्रॉम अ जर्मन वर्क, द फॉस्टबच. Faustbach is a German work from which this play has been adopted. ठीक है, it's a work in German and from which this play has been adopted, and Marlowe play has been also called as a dramatization of this tradition. So this play is also called as the dramatization of this tradition. बिकॉज उसने जो मिडिवल ड्रामा के सारे जो इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स होती है, लाइक यू नो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट बिटवीन गुड एंड इविल, मैजिक, ऑल दिस थिंग हैज बीन डिपिक्टेड ब्यूटिफुली इन दिस पर्टिकुलर वर्क. So all these are points of Dr. Faustus. So now your work is to please read about Dr. Faustus and make notes, because this work is very important. So you should know the characters, the episodes, and the important motive and themes of this particular work. Fine. Let's move ahead now. Okay. Next comes the Jew of Malta. So Jew of Malta is also a work by Marlowe, and this story depicts a lust of a Machiavellian character. ठीक है, तो हमने देखा टैम्बोलिन में फॉस्टियन अर्थ थी, यहाँ पे मचिविलियन कैरेक्टर है. It shows a Machiavellian character, and what is the name of that character? That character name is Barabbas. Okay, that character name is Barabbas. ठीक है, So it is actually shows a Machiavellian character. And what are Machiavellian character? They are highly ambitious. ठीक है? So हमारा Faustian urge में भी यही होता है कि for the power they can do anything, and ये भी होता है Machiavellian character for the power, for that ambition उनके इतने ज़्यादा high होते हैं कि for that to achieve that वो कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. Okay? And Barabbas. Okay. So Barabbas was the name of the character, Machiavellian character, and the play shows his actually the urge for power and his subsequent death. Okay. So Geo of Malta again is a very important work. कि राजस्थान सेट में भी इससे काफी क्वेश्चंस पूछे जा चुके हैं प्रीवियस ईयर्स में. ठीक है. Next is the massacre at Paris. So this massacre at Paris is not a full work. It is an into fragments. ठीक है. And the story deals with massacre of Protestants in Paris on Saint Bartholomew's Day. ये आपका क्वेश्चन आ चुका है नेट में. स्पेलिंग आप चेक कर लेना इसका. ओके, because I think this is a spelling, it can be wrong also. So basically it actually shows the massacre of Protestant in Paris on Saint Bartholomew Day. ठीक है. So ये क्वेश्चन पूछा जा चुका है. ठीक है. सो यू हैव टू रिमेंबर दिस दैट मैसेकर इज पेरिस. तो इसी बुक में पूछा क्वेश्चन था कि इन विच वर्क ऑफ मार्लो द मैसेकर ऑफ प्रोटेस्टेंट हैज बीन शोन ऑन सेंट बार्थोलोम्यूज डे. तो इट इज व्हाट? इट इज द मैसेकर एट पेरिस. So please remember this point. आपको ये point याद रखना है. Okay, so it is the question of net. Next, Hero and Leander. So Hero Leander is a narrative poem which actually written by Christopher Marlowe, and the poem deals with the love story of the Greek legend character named as Hero, who falls in love with a man named Leander. Okay, and who completed this poem? George Chapman. So George Chapman is the person who completed this poem. आपने Marlowe से. Very good, Gohar. Yes, it is actually George Chapman. Okay, let's move ahead now. Okay, now let's come to William Shakespeare. So we have completed Marlowe. ठीक है. अब हम पढ़ेंगे विलियम शेक्सपियर के बारे में. सो एज यू नो दैट शेक्सपियर इज द ग्रेटेस्ट राइटर ऑफ दैट टाइम. ठीक है. उसने इतने ज्यादा ड्रामास और प्लेस लिखे हैं दैट द एज इज सिनोनिमस टू हिज नेम, दैट इज द शेक्सपियरियन age. And who called Shakespeare as an he is not an age, he is for all times. ठीक है. ये किसने बोला था? कैन यू लेट मी इन द चैट बॉक्स कि किसने शेक्सपियर के लिए बोला था he is not for age, he is for all time? Who has said it for Shakespeare? Can you let me in the chat box? Yes, he is known as a Bard of Avon because he was born in the Warwick, Avonshire. So, but who called Shakespeare as that he is not an age, he is for all times? Can you let me in the chat box? Yes, basically Ben Jonson. बेन जॉनसन ने बोला था कि शेक्सपियर इज नॉट एन एज बट फॉर ऑल टाइम्स. ये क्वेश्चन है नेट का. ठीक है. सो प्लीज मार्क इट इंपॉर्टेंट. ही इज फॉर ऑल टाइम्स बिकॉज ही वॉज सो ग्रेट. उसकी इतनी ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस थी उस एज में. इतने वर्क्स लिखे थे कि मतलब ही इज शाइनिंग एट एवरी कॉर्नर ऑफ रेनेसां एज. दैट्स व्हाई जो शेक्सपियर के थीम होते थे प्लेस में, वी कैन रिलेट टू दैट थीम्स टुडे एज वेल इन दिस सेंचुरी. ठीक है. So that's why Ben Jonson has said that he is not an age, he is for all times. No problem, Gaur. That's how you learn. Okay. Fine. Let's talk about his major plays. The first play is The Taming of the Shrew. ठीक है. So basically this is a now generally thought of a bad quarto of Shakespeare play. ठीक है. It was not a very famous play of Shakespeare, but you should remember that this play is set in a city called Padua. ठीक है. ये एक बार मैच द कॉलम्स में आया था. So in that case, so you should remember this. This is set in the city of Padua, and the story opens with an induction in which a drunken tinker, and what was the name of the tinker? Christopher Sly. ठीक है, कैरेक्टर का नाम भी याद होना चाहिए आपको, क्रिस्टोफर Sly. Christopher Sly was a drunkard tinker in this particular work, who tricked by a group of noblemen into believing that he is the Lord. Okay, so how this episodes proceeds after this kind of a belief? That's what the story all about. So please, you should read The Taming of the Shrew. Okay. Next is Love Labours Lost. So this is not also a very important work of Shakespeare, but you should remember that it actually includes the works of Sir Philip Sidney and John Lilly. Okay, so it is influenced. This play is influenced by the work of Sidney and John Lilly. John Lilly is a university wit, and Sidney is a very important poet of the Renaissance age. Okay. Fine. Okay, so you should remember this point. Next is The Merchant of Venice. ठीक है, The Merchant of Venice भी बहुत important work है Shakespeare का, and you should remember that basically in this work the major characters were Shylock, who was a wealthy Jewish moneylender, and Antonio, who was a merchant of Venice. Okay, so this you should remember the okay, Shylock and Adonias. ठीक है, ये आपके कैरेक्टर थे इसके, सॉरी, Shylock and Antonio. So these were the characters of the Merchant of Venice. And who was Shylock? Shylock was basically a wealthy Jewish moneylender, and Antonio was the Merchant of Venice. And what was the dispute between them two? You should read in your play. Okay, make a reading of the Merchant of Venice. Next is Much Ado About Nothing. Again, it is basically used as a handful of sources for Much About Nothing. And what was the source of this particular play? It is Aristotle's Orlando Furioso. Okay, Orlando Furioso is a major source for Much Ado About Nothing, and this play is basically Shakespeare's source for romance between Beatrice and Benedict. ठीक है, किसके बीच में? Beatrice and Benedict were the two characters, okay, of this particular work, जिसका romance इसके work में दिखाया गया है. Okay, so I'm just telling you the characters name, not the full story. Your homework is to read the full story. ठीक है, because अगर मैं पूरी story सुनाने बैठ गई तो हमारी 4 घंटे की क्लास हो जाएगी. Fine. Next is The Midsummer Night's Dream. Okay, yes, Portia is the heroine. Very good, go ahead. Okay, so next is A Merchant of Venice. Sorry, A Midsummer Night Dream. So Midsummer Night Dream is also the title page of this work, appears in the Shakespeare first quarto, and this play basically states had been sound publication of that particular time. Okay, and this was a very important play of Shakespeare. You should make a reading of it, and this play includes the story within a story device, and Pyramus and Thisbe. Okay, these were the two important characters of this particular work. Next, The Merry Wives of Windsor is an important work of Shakespeare as well. Okay, so again, you should not be going deep into this play. You should remember that basically Falstaff is an important character of this particular work. ठीक है, so Falstaff का जो character था, it actually made an appearance in Henry IV Part 2 as well, and Elizabeth was so much impressed by this character of Falstaff that she requested Shakespeare to write a play in which Falstaff is the main character. That's why Shakespeare has written Merry Wives of Windsor. Fine. Next, Troilus and Cressida. So you should remember that जो Chaucer का था उसमें और इसमें स्पेलिंग में फर्क है. ठीक है, it is not the same word which is written by Chaucer. It is a different work, but the story has the same background. ठीक है, and the prologue of this particular play refers to the Ben Jonson poetaster. तो जो बेन जॉनसन का वर्क है पोएट टेस्टर, दिस work Troilus and Cressida by Chaucer has allusion to that particular work as well. ठीक है, and it actually shows the story of Troilus Cressida, and the background is the battle of Troy, and how Cressida actually proves to be a faithless woman to Troilus, and this is the story all about. Yes, very good. Henry Ford part 1, part 2 both. Okay. Yes, any problem you can just post in the chat box. And this is the story all about Troilus and Cressida. Next is Julius Caesar. So you should also remember that Julius Caesar is again a very historical play by Shakespeare. And what happens in Julius Caesar, that Brutus reluctantly agrees with Caesar's plan to actually get to assassinate Caesar as the only way to avoid tyranny. And after Caesar's death, Brutus persuades the crown with the actually argument that Caesar had to die for the sake of republic, but Antony, okay, reminds the people that Caesar's virtue show them his corpse and read Caesar's will, which leaves his money and private gardens to the people, okay. And Antony's speech provokes that turns into a civil war. So Brutus is visited by Caesar's ghost on the eve of Battle of Philippi. Okay, so there's a reference to Battle of Philippi, and Caesar and Brutus are defeated in battle the next day and have their followers help them commit suicide. So this was all about the Julius and Caesar. I have told you something about Julius and Caesar because this is again a very important play from the examination point of view. Okay. Next is King Lear. So you must be knowing the story of King Lear because it is a very tragical play by William Shakespeare, and it is very famous as well. Okay, so what happens in this particular play? Lear stages a love test for his 3 daughters. Okay, who were the daughters? Goneril, Regal, and Cordelia. Okay, so these were the 3 daughters. ठीक है, तो किंग लियर क्या करता है, एक लव टेस्ट करता है फॉर हिज 3 डॉटर, दैट इज गोनरिल, रीगल एंड कॉर्डेलिया. And what happens that these 2 daughters, Goneril and Regan, doesn't answer, but Cordelia answers that she loves Lear only according to her bond. Okay, so basically Goneril and Regan ने बड़े बड़े चीजें बोली, मैं आपको इतना प्यार करती हूँ, उतना करती हूँ, कि Lear got impressed, but Cordelia gave a short and crisp answer that he loves Lear only according to her bond. So the Lear becomes very infuriated by Cordelia's lack of flattery, and Lear disinherited Cordelia, who then leaves Britain to marry the king of France. Okay, and what happens later on? Lear also banishes his courtier Kent for speaking in Cordelia's defense, and the play charts basically the Lear's descent into madness after Goneril and Regal strip him and cast him out of his home. Okay, and our play also follows the fortune of the courtier Gloucester, and I told you that Gloucester plot in King Lear has been borrowed from Philip Sidney Arcadia. ठीक है, so this was the story King Lear all about. Okay, let's move ahead now. 12th Night. So 12th Night has a subtitle that is What You Will. ठीक है, जो 12th Night है उसका सबटाइटल क्या है? What You Will, and it is begins with a shipwreck on the coast of Illyria. Okay, so कैसे begin होता है? Shipwreck से. Okay, it begins with a shipwreck. Tempest again is a play by Shakespeare, and it usurps his, so it is a story about Prospero, who was the Duke of Milan, and how he actually just changed Caliban, who was a spirit, and the spirit Ariel was there. So these were some of the characters in Tempest, so you should read about Tempest as well. And Macbeth. Okay, so Macbeth is again a tragedy by Shakespeare. So basically जो 4 tragedy है शेक्सपियर की, Hamlet भी है उसमें, Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello and King Lear. सो इनका आपको एक सीक्वेंस पता होना चाहिए ईयर का, बिकॉज ये भी आपके क्वेश्चन आ चुका है नेट में, ठीक है. सो प्लीज रीड अबाउट मैकबेथ एज वेल एंड लेट्स टॉक अबाउट हैमलेट. Okay, so Hamlet is also a play by Shakespeare, and it is actually one of the greatest tragedy which Shakespeare has written. Okay, and what was the full title of Hamlet? Hamlet का full title is Tragedy of Hamlet. Okay, so the Tragedy of Hamlet is the full title of Hamlet, and who was also and one more thing was there, the Prince of Denmark. He was a prince of Okay, he was a prince of Denmark. Yes, Hamlet is the longest play of Shakespeare. That is the greatest tragedy. That's why it's the greatest tragedy which Shakespeare has written. Okay, and this play contains a device of play within a play. ठीक है, कौन सा डिवाइस था इसमें? प्ले विद इन अ प्ले का डिवाइस है इसमें, ठीक है. एंड घोस्ट अपीयरेंस एंड इंसेस्ट थीम वाज आल्सो द इंटीग्रल पार्ट ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर प्ले. Also, it is believed that Ur Hamlet is a lost play depicting the same story of Hamlet's revenge upon his uncle Claudius and the murder of his father, who was the king Hamlet. Okay, so Ur Hamlet is the lost, version of the play Hamlet. Fine, and this basically play this Hamlet version in modern time is written by Tom Stoppard as what was the title? Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. ठीक है, किसने लिखा है? टॉम स्टॉपर्ड ने लिखा है Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. This is the modern adaptation of the play Hamlet, and in this basically play Tom Stoppard treats Hamlet two minor characters as central protagonists, that is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Yes, and this very good Gohar, play within a play due to knowing the reality of the murder of the king, and basically Hamlet calls it a mouse trap. Okay, and this kind of a play within a play, Hamlet also called it a mouse trap. And to be or not to be is a very famous soliloquy of the play Hamlet, which is echoed in Thomas Becket Endgame as well. To be, not to be. Okay, it is a very famous soliloquy of Hamlet and which has been echoed. ठीक है, ये भी क्वेश्चन पूछा गया है, किसमें इको हुई है? बेकेट एंडगेम में. Okay, it has been echoed in Becket Endgame. Okay, that was all about Hamlet. Let's proceed now. Okay, so basically Shakespeare has written narrative poems as well, and I have mentioned the narrative poem which Shakespeare has written. So Shakespeare is not only known for writing drama. Okay, so the period when theaters were closed because of plague, Shakespeare wrote two narrative poems on erotic themes. Okay, that is Venus and Adonis and the Knave of Lucery. So these were the two poems which were written by Shakespeare, and Shakespeare's name is not supplied on the title page of the either of the works. Okay, so Shakespeare का यहाँ पे नहीं लिखा गया था नाम on the title pages, and both work instead contains a signed dedication from the Henry Worsley, that was the Earl of Southampton. Okay, and as you remember, as you know that maybe कि Shakespeare has written sonnet as well, and how many sonnets he has written? 154 sonnets. Okay, out of which 1 to 26 sonnets has been dedicated to that is been dedicated to the fair youth. Okay, who was also known as the Mr. W.H. ठीक है, Mr. W.H. was the person whom he has dedicated his sonnet, who is also known as the fair youth. And the rest of the sonnets he has dedicated to a woman known as Dark Lady. Okay, she is known as the Dark Lady. Fine. So this was all about Shakespeare. Let's move ahead. Let's come to the Jacobean age. ठीक है, हमने पढ़ा शेक्सपियर की एज में मैंने ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा राइटर्स कवर करने की कोशिश करी एंड आई हैव टॉक्ड अबाउट द इम्पॉर्टेंट वर्क्स एज वेल एंड asked you to read about those work as well. ठीक है, so please make your own notes by reading those work and just the points which I have told you in this particular session. Okay. Okay, yes. So the Jacobean age, so the period ranges from 1603 to 1625. So this age is also known as Stuart age, which began with the accession of James VI of Scotland, who was actually named as James I of England. तो वो James VI of Scotland था जो James I of England known करा गया. ठीक है, this age started with him. Okay, so basically what happened that James was the son of Mary Stuart, who was also known as the Queen of Scots. Okay, so Queen Elizabeth remained unmarried throughout her lifetime, and the next in line to ascend the throne was Mary, okay, who was the Queen of Scots. But after she was found guilty of multiple plots to assassinate her cousin, that is Queen Elizabeth, she is executed on the Queen's order. So later on what happened, her son then inherits the throne of England, uniting England and Scotland. Why he has united? Because he was James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England. Okay, and this word Jacobean is derived from the modern Latin word Jacobius, that is from Jacobus, and this will actually mark the beginning of the Jacobean age. Fine. So, okay, so it began with the accession of James VI of Scotland and James I in 1603. Okay, and this age has an emergence of new kind of conversational tone. Okay, so there is a very prominent shift that occurs from Elizabethan to Jacobean drama in terms of the thematic concerns as well. Okay, and a new kind of conversational tone of drama also emerged. Okay, as opposed to the highly stylized rhetorical used in the Elizabethan drama. And along with moralizing, there is a fascination with the wicked and the corrupt, vice rather than virtue, which actually was the main point of Jacobean play. Talking about the writing style, so satire emerges as a form of writing as well and is deployed as a tool for social commentary. ठीक है, तो अब कभी अगर सोसाइटी के बारे में कमेंट करना है, so writers used to use satire in this particular period. Okay, and there was an excess of melodrama and sensationalism which was prevalent in the plays. Okay, so what happened that these were actually prevalent in the plays as a residue form of fascination with the stage, which was there in the Elizabethan court. Fine, and masque emerged as a genre. This is a very important point, that masque, in which age masque emerged in the Jacobean age as a genre during the reign of James I. Okay, so masque form which flourished during Jacobean period was different from public theatre, as masques were performed for king's entertainment. So basically the major theme for performing masque major motive was for the king's entertainment. Yes, Ben Jonson was a dominant figure of Jacobean age. Very good. Okay, let's move ahead now. Now the greatest writer of the Jacobean age, that is Ben Jonson, has come into play. So please remember that Ben Jonson was a leading dramatist of this age who popularized a new kind of drama. And what kind of a drama it was? It was comedy of humor. Okay, so Ben Jonson popularized a new form of drama that is known as comedy of humor. And what is comedy of humor? It is a kind of drama which emphasized upon realism and presentation of common lapses of human being. Okay, so ये हमें क्या करता है, realism को, जो भी real situation है, that is being depicted through the use of comedy. Okay, and this Ben Jonson uses basically urban space and social elites as the central force in his writings. Okay, this was about Ben Jonson. Let's talk about his work. So every man in his humor is the first work. Okay, so it is basically a sequel to basically Every Man in His Humor was the first part, and a sequel is also there which is known as Every Man Out of His Humor, and both are these comedy of humor or the comedy of correction. Fine. Okay, so let's talk about Every Man in His Humor. It is basically a genre of humorous comedy. So as you know, Ben Jonson is famous for writing comedy of humor. So it is a genre of humorous comedy as well. And it is about a man, or you can say he was a gentleman which name was Noel. Whose name was Noel, and basically he is concerned for his son's moral development, and for that he attempts to spy on his son, and his son was a typical city gallant. Okay, and he continually subverted by the servant brainworm who employs for this purpose. So वो अपने son पे spy करता है, and किसको वो लगाता है उसके पीछे? Brainworm को, who was his servant. So this is all about the episode which falls, आपको हंसी भी आएगी, you burst with laughter, reality भी portray होगी. So this was a kind of writing style of Ben Jonson. Okay, now let's move ahead. Let's talk about poetaster. So poetaster is a widely accepted among scholars and critics that the character of Horace in the poetaster represent Ben Jonson. This is a very important point. जो यहाँ पे character of Horace है in poetaster, it actually represent Johnson. Sorry, I should write Ben Jonson, otherwise you will understand that it is Samuel Johnson. ठीक है? So it actually, the character of Horace, it actually shows represent Ben Jonson. ठीक है? And Johnson attempts in the poetaster to express his views on the poet's moral duty in society. ठीक है? तो एक poet की क्या duties होती towards society, so he has actually emphasized on these duties in this particular work. Fine. Next is Eastward Ho. So this is comedy written by Ben Jonson in collaboration with Chapman and Marston. ठीक है? So किसके साथ उसने लिखा था? Chapman plus Marston plus Ben Jonson. So these were the writer of this particular work, Eastward Ho. ठीक है? And it is actually a Scottish comedy, and Johnson and Chapman were arrested for creating offense against royal authorities. ठीक है? तो उस समय कौन रूल कर रहा था? उस समय James I was ruling, and if you remember, I have told you that he was first James VI of Scotland. ठीक है? So उन्होंने इस वर्क में स्कॉटिश लोगों की मजाक उड़ाया. So James I was offended, and that's why Johnson and Chapman were arrested for writing this work. ठीक है? Next is Walpole. Okay, so Walpole is basically a play which is based on the elements of city comedy and is also a beast fable. ठीक है? ये एक city comedy है plus beast fable है. Okay, it is a city comedy and the beast fable, and the subtitle of the play is The Fox. ठीक है? इसका एक subtitle भी है. ये क्वेश्चन आ चुका है नेट में. ठीक है? व्हाट इज द मैच द कॉलम्स में आया था कि वॉलपोल का जो सबटाइटल है वो क्या है? व्हाट इज द सबटाइटल? द फॉक्स. ठीक है? एंड द मेजर कैरेक्टर इन द प्ले आर वॉलपोल. फर्स्ट कैरेक्टर है वॉलपोल, हु इज द रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ फॉक्स. देन इट इज अ कैरेक्टर नेम एज मोस्का, हु इज द रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ फ्लाई. Then a character था Voltor. Yeah, Voltor was a character. Yes, Voltor who represent vulture, and Corbecu who represents crow. एक और कैरेक्टर था उसमें, I think Corvino was a character जो represent करता था Raven को. So that's why it is a beast fable, because each character represents some of the other animal. So that's why it is a beast fable. Yes, yes, Shreya Yadav, I am teaching this paper 2 of NET, that is English Literature. Okay, so that is all about Volpone. So please read. Sorry. Yeah. Next is Epicoin or the Silent, woman. ठीक है, so this is again a very important play because first of all this play is based in London, and Morose, who was a very wealthy man and an old man of this particular play, is actually want to marry. Okay, obsessive hatred for noise, and he has a very obsessive hatred for noise, and he made plans to disinherit his nephew Dauphin by marrying. ठीक है, so जब वो मैरी करने जाता है, so he search for every bride, and उसको ऐसी ब्राइड चाहिए थी कि जो बोलती ना हो, ठीक है, जो नॉइस फ्री हो, ठीक है. बट व्हाट हैपेंस, दिस डॉफिन एक्चुअली लेड अ ट्रैप. उसने शादी तो करवा दी, but what happened in the end that when she actually when after marriage, when they came in front of each other, and that women was actually speaking relentlessly. Okay, and this was actually a trap laid by Dauphin for Epision. Okay, and this Morose is dismissed harshly. ठीक है, उसको like इसके साथ धोखा हुआ. He could not resist the marriage, and that is the plot all about. Okay, let's move ahead. The Alchemist. Okay, so Alchemist is a comedy by Ben Jonson, and it is actually generally considered as Jonson's most characterized comedy. Okay, and this play opens with an outbreak of plague in London, which forces actually Lovett, who is a character in this play, to flee temporarily to the country, leaving his house under the charge of 3 लोगों के अंदर के उसने छोड़ के गया था. One is Butler, then is Jeremy, and there was one more, I think a woman was there, I'm not able to recall the name. I think Doll Common was the name. Okay, so Doll Common was a prostitute under whose 3 people के charge में वो अपना घर छोड़ के गया था. And what are the episode which followed, that is the play all about. Next is Bartholomew Fair. So it is again a play which actually refers to the Bartholomew Fair, which is actually celebrated every year on 24th August. Fine. And this play begins with a dramatist, Little Wit, and his friends Quarrius. And there was one more character, I think Winwife was a character. They are plotting how to win, the game which they were actually playing, or a hypocritical Puritan was there. So you should remember this play because I'm not able to recall this play properly, Bartholomew's Day. So please make a reading of this particular play. Okay, next is Catiline. Okay, so Catiline is also a रोमन ट्रेजेडी बाय जॉनसन. आपको बस ये याद रखना है कि जो कैटलिन है एक रोमन ट्रेजेडी है. बेसिकली जॉनसन इज नोन फॉर राइटिंग कॉमेडीज, बट दिस इज द ट्रेजेडी विच इज रिटन बाय जॉनसन, एंड इट इज द रोमन ट्रेजेडी. Okay, let's talk about Thomas Middleton. So Thomas Middleton is also an important writer of the Jacobean age, and he wrote comedies of city life and revenge plays. ठीक है, कैसे कॉमेडी लिखता था? City life and revenge plays. Okay, he has to write the comedy of city life and revenge plays, and he has written a famous work of his time. One is the game of chess. Okay, the game of chess has not been mentioned over here. So he has written the most important work, that is the game of chess. Okay, so the game of chess is an example of the political comedy of Jacobean age, and this work is also the name of the second section of the Iliad's poem The Wasteland, which could either refer to the play or the game of chess in Women Beware Women. So please remember that this work has a allusion to Iliad's Wasteland as well, and it's a complete section. Okay, next work is The Roaring Girl. So it is also it is a play by Thomas Middleton, and it is written with collaboration with Dekker. किससे कोलैबोरेशन में लिखा है? It is the work by Middleton and Dekker, and the play depicts the story of a rolling girl named Moll Cutpurse. ठीक है, क्या नाम था उसका गर्ल का? Moll Cutpurse. Okay, just remember the main character, and it is basically a fictionalized dramatization of Manfred's life, also known as Moll Cutpurse. तो इसकी लाइफ का डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया गया है in this work. And who was the roaring girl? The roaring girl was mall cut purse. Okay, now Changeling. So let's talk about Changeling. It is also written with by Middleton in collaboration with Rowley. ठीक है, इसका collaboration किसका है? Rowley का. Okay, now it's your work to read about this play, and this play basically depicts the subversion of class relation as Beatrice, which is the main character in this particular work, falls prey to sexual intrigues of a servant, D. Floors. So this was the play. Then the Chaste Maid at Cheapside. So this is important work of Middleton as well, and it depicts the story of Moll Yellowhammer. Moll Yellowhammer is a Chaste Maid in Cheapside. She was the main character of this particular work. Next is Women Beware Women. It is basically the chess scene. As I told you of the T.S. Wasteland is either from the game of chess or the Women Beware Women. It is a very important play of Middleton, and the same chess game device is used by John Fletcher in his play The Spanish Curate as well. Okay, next. Beaumont and Fletcher. So first work of Beaumont and Fletcher is Flaster. So it is basically a flaster or a love lies a bleeding. Just check the title once. So I think this is the same as well. Love lies a bleeding is basically a subtitle of this play, Philaster, and it's a Jacobean era tragic comedy by Beaumont and Fletcher. Next is the Maid's Tragedy. So Maid's Tragedy is again a play by Beaumont and Fletcher, and basically when Melanchius in this particular play returns to Rhodes, he finds his dear friend Amintor is recently married, but not to his throat-plight love. Aspasia was the name, I think, of the girl, and that's how what the events follow. It is about this, but in this play, the Maid's Tragedy. Okay, next is the Night of the Burning Pestle. So the Night of the Burning Pestle is basically known as for this technique of play within a play. Okay, it is known for the technique of play within a play. And A King Has and No King. It is again a play by Beaumont and Fletcher and contains the idea of incest and the theme of changeling. So idea of incest is the main theme of this particular play. Okay, next is Thomas Heywood. So Thomas Heywood is again a popular Jacobean dramatist, and it's known for his plays like The Woman Killed with Kindness, Fair Maid of the West, The English Traveller, and The Apology for Actors. So now it's your homework to read about this play as the first play, The Woman Killed with Kindness, in a domestic tragedy. Okay, it is a domestic tragedy, and it is known main theme of adultery has been shown in this particular work. Next, The Mere Fair of Fateside is subtitled A Girl with Gold. Okay, The Girl Worth Gold is its subtitle. Subtitle of The Fair Maid of the West is The Girl Worth Gold. Next is The English Traveller. It is again a domestic tragedy and is known for adultery. Okay? It is again a domestic tragedy. And next is Apology for Actors. It is basically the best Jacobean works regarding defense of stage, like Thomas Law's defense. Okay? It actually defending the stage, and here Heywood defends theatre from Puritan criticism and makes it an important part of English culture. So this was all about the Apology of Actors. Last is John Ford. Okay. This is second last, John Ford. So John Ford is again a very important Jacobean play and a Carolean era playwright. And the first work he has written is The Witch of Edmonton. So basically, this play is written by Dekker, Ford, and Rowley. Okay? डेकर, फोर्ड और राउले ने ये वर्क लिखा था. And this is basically based on the true story about Elizabeth Sawyer, who was hanged on the use of witchcraft in England. So this is the Witch of Edmonton. Then is Lover's Melancholy, and this is an early Caroline era tragic comedy, and it is regarded as the first unaided drama. First unaided drama, because he has written solely on his own. He has not collaborated with any other writers like his previous work, The Witch of Edmonton. Okay, next is The Spanish Gypsy. It is again one of the important work of English dramatist John Ford, and it is a tragic comedy, and it is actually written in collaboration with different dramatists like Thomas Middleton, Rowley, Dekker and Ford. The four of them have written The Spanish Gypsy. That's why this Lover's Melancholy has been called Ford's for unaided work, because in rest of his work he has collaborated with one or the more writers. So it is again a tragic comedy. Fine. Okay, let's proceed to the last writer, that is Thomas Dekker. So Thomas Dekker is basically known for The Shoemaker's Holiday. Okay, he is basically known for The Shoemaker's Holiday, and it is a humorous study of the plain working class by Dekker. Okay, so this is a study of the working class people. Next play is Honest Whore. So Honest Whore is also written in collaboration with Middleton. Okay, he has written in collaboration with Middleton. Then next is Satyromatics. So basically this work is written by Dekker and Marston. Okay, Satyromatics is written by Dekker and Marston. Okay, and next is that, and also remember that Satyromatics is a reply to Ben Jonson Poetaster. Okay, it is a reply to Ben Jonson Poetaster. Okay, just remember this question of net. ये question of net, ये net में question आ चुका है, so please remember it. ठीक है. Next is the last work, The Witch of Edmonton. As I told you that John Ford has written collaboration with Dekker and Rowley. So again here The Witch of Edmonton comes into play here as well, because it is written by Rowley, Dekker and Ford. So it is a work of Dekker as well. Okay, any doubts you can just ask me in the chat box. I will be answering your doubts, because we are done with most of the writers of the Elizabethan and Jacobean period. So I have tried to cover the important writers and this work in this particular lecture. I hope you have got your concepts right and enjoyed the lecture. In case you have any doubts, you can post in the chat comment section as well after the class, and I'll be personally handling your doubts and answering them as well. Okay, so now students, please stay tuned for the 1 p.m. session as well, because whatever theory we have studied in this particular session, we will be actually applying to those previous year's question, which I will be bringing in the 1 p.m. session as well. Okay, so please stay tuned to this session. Until then, have a break, eat something, and just be back for the 1 p.m. session. Okay, thank you everyone.